Prestaya Bhutale Shivate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sanjavadi Paschatya Desatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Do this later, I guess. Today is Nrsimha Chaturdasi, and the verses that I wanted to discuss today, this evening, is something else. The next three verses from Canto 7, Chapter 9. Canto 7, Chapter 9, the entire canto is a discussion between Yudhisthira and Narada Muni. The occasion, the circumstance, the context is the Rajasuya Yagya. Rajasuya Yagya comes after the Kurukshetra battle, and Yudhisthira is to be installed as the emperor of the world. As you see, Krishna is the guest of honor, seated on a Vyasasana, or a raised seat. And in the course of the discussion, the course of the activities, there's a question that begins Canto 7, chapter number 1, where Yudhisthira wants to know. There's Krishna seated in front, but he's addressing Narada because Krishna likes that his devotees are honored. So he's asking Narada in the presence of Krishna. Is the Supreme Person, of course Krishna is the Supreme Person, is the Supreme Person partial or impartial? Because it looks like there's partiality, but that's not possible because the personality of Godhead is not partial, but it looks like. So could you please explain? And Narada says, a very nice example to help understand the impartiality of the personality of Godhead is that he enters into this discussion of Hiranyakashipu. It goes way, way back to who was Hiranyakashipu before he was Hiranyakashipu. The giant Vijay story and the four Kumaras and the gates of Vaikuntha, and that whole explanation is presented. And then we're up to chapter 9. In chapter 9, after Hiranyakashipu has been dismembered by Lord Nrsimhadev, the personality of Godhead, a form of Lord Vishnu, in the form of half man, half lion, Lord Nrsimhadev, he is still in an angry mood, roaring and terrifying everyone in all directions. So after attempting the demigods, attempting to pacify the Lord with nice prayers, it says streams of eloquent, elevated celestial prayers, that doesn't work. So they then request Prahlada, and Prahlada goes forward and begins offering prayers. And we're up to verse number 47. So just a little review, because review is always nice. Yesterday evening, we discussed 45 and 46. 45 and 46 are expressions of Prahlada's humility, and although expressing his inability to offer proper prayers to the Supreme Lord, he does so anyways. And he indicates that he, the personality of Godhead, Lord Nrsingadev, is very merciful, all-powerful. Previously, the verses, he creates everything, maintains everything, he oversees everything, maintains all living entities. And then he expresses that some living entities are very unfortunate. We heard this phrase, Maya Sukhaya Param Udvato Vimudhan, the Vimudhas, the very foolish persons. They're enamored, although they have the human form of life, they're enamored by false happiness, Maya Sukha. And they spend their entire life, and then lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, pursuing illusory happiness and implicating themselves by doing so in the complexity of material existence, birth after birth. And please, 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 you're all powerful, you're all merciful, you can deliver them, please deliver them. I don't want to be delivered. I don't want to enter into the eternal kingdom of God, leaving behind these other foolish people. So it was an appeal, a universal, the well-being of all living entities kind of an appeal. And with restating again, you're the one that can do it. So that's basically where we ended up. And then comes the next 3 verses. He can do it, so this says Krishna, but that's because that's the context of the Bhagavatam. That is to say, Lord Nrsingadev, one of the avatars of Vishnu, but Vishnu and the avatars of Vishnu are expansions from the original source, Krishna. So that's Krishna is the cause of all material causes and effects. We're going to go into that he's the cause of all spiritual causes and effects, but he's the cause of all material causes and effects also. So here's a nice verse with the translation. By authorized Vedic knowledge, one can see that the forms of cause and effect in the cosmic manifestation belong to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for the cosmic manifestation is his energy. So this and the next verse are going to emphasize the non-difference in the difference and non-difference feature of the source of everything and everything that comes from the source. There's a non-difference feature. There's a difference feature in addition. So difference and non-difference. This is emphasizing the non-difference. That is to say, the energies of the cosmic manifestation, and they may be a cause that causes some effect, and that effect may then be a cause of another downstream effect, and that effect may be the cause of another downstream effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. Krishna is the cause of all causes. And there's this non-difference relationship between that which emanates from the source and the emanations. That emanations and their source are non-different. Here's a nice little capsule of what was just said. Kind of a small image, but I'll help you. There's a tree on the upper left. The tree is showing branches and twigs, and limbs of the tree, and at the bottom is the root of the tree. So in little letters, the root of the tree, that's cause. And the effect is the tree itself. So cause and effect. And on the lower left, there's grain. And there's grain, there's the cause. Of course, there's the cause of the grain. But the grain is the cause, the material cause of pasta or spaghetti or some product. But there, behind the product, there's the cause. Of course, and Krishna is the one behind all those causes. Or up on the upper right, it's showing the cycle of rainfall coming as a result of this effect of the sun shining on the sea or the bodies of water, forming clouds, and then it comes down in the form of rain. So, though that cycle of weather conditions, there's the effect and there's the cause. Just below that, the weaver, he's taking, as you see in the image, the upper left of that picture, there's a ball of cotton. And when you look at a ball of cotton and you look at what the weaver is doing, it's hard to see the connection. But the cloth is but a product of cotton becomes thread, thread becomes dyed, the weaver weaves the cloth and makes a garment that's on the lower right. Cause and effect. That's just little examples of cause and effect. Both cause and effect are nothing but energies of the Lord. That's the message. Now, kind of simple, but it leads to something that's a little more difficult to understand than that one. Just do it one more time. In the cosmic manifestation, there's causes and effects. Krishna is the cause of the cause, and Krishna is the cause of the effect, which comes from the cause. So his Prahlada's look face to face with Lord Nrsimhadev. He's identifying Lord Nrsimhadev as a manifestation of Vishnu. That statement came earlier in his glorification of Lord Brahma. So I'm repeating all of that. He, Prahlada, he's a great authority. He knows the Bhagavatam thoroughly. So in the Bhagavatam, there's this understanding of the source of matter and spirit, and the absolute truth is that, just like it says in Bhagavad Gita, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo, Matak Sarvam Pravartate. That's one, the foundation of bhakti, iti matva bhajante mam, one who knows there's original source of matter and spirit, and the matter and spirit come from the source. They're dependent upon, not independent from the source. Those that know this, they engage in devotional service. So Prahlada knows, and he's engaged in devotional service. He's teaching the ways of pure devotional service. He's modeling it by his own example, by his achar, and also by his activities, his prachar. So, therefore, O my Lord, just as a wise man, by considering cause and effect, can see how fire pervades wood, those engaged in devotional service understand how you are both the cause and effect. How does fire pervade wood? So when you look at wood, like here's a nice table, it's a wooden table. It doesn't look like fire. But if you contact the wood with fire, the fire that's stored in the wood comes out. And that's what when there's fire, that's all it is. It's the transformation of this state to that state, because it's already there. It was discussed earlier, to repeat what was discussed earlier. You are situated in everywhere and in everything, within every atom. You're all pervasive. He's facing Lord Shingadev, who just dismembered Hiranyakashipu. But he understands there's other features of Vishnu. Vishnu expands within every atom. So he's within every atom. And as he's within every atom, his energies are within the atom. Because he's there and the energies are from him. So, in other words, back to this nice example, just as fire pervades wood, so similarly, you may not be visible to everybody any more than seeing the fire in this table. You can't see the fire in the wooden table, but you can know that the fire is present by bringing the fire out. Otherwise, something that the wall is, other materials aren't going to burst into flame by contact with fire. I've always wondered, does somebody have an answer to this question? Lanka was a city of gold, and Hanuman burned it. How did gold burn? Huh? Well, the only thing I could think, I've never heard an explanation. Gold plated. Beneath the gold plating, there's wood. And so when the fire that's in the wood that's covered by gold plating, then the city was burned. And it, like, the paintings show the whole city is on fire. The whole city is on fire. So, made of gold, meaning, anyway, it's another question. But as fire is in wood, similarly the personality of Godhead within everything, as the cause and the effect, because he's both the cause and the effect of everything. Okay, so that's the non-difference between the personality of Godhead and the cosmic manifestation. Then again, this non-difference, the abeta feature, is spoken of again. Then he's going to go back to the difference and non-difference simultaneously. But just to the refrain here, here's the Sanskrit of the verse. There's Prahlada on the lap of Lord Nrsimhadev, nice deity. So here's the verse. Oh, Supreme Lord, you are actually the air, the earth, fire, air, sky, and water. Indeed, you are everything, subtle and gross. Now this is the non-difference. Obviously there's difference, but simultaneously different and non-different. Bhagavatam, that's the Bhagavatam's teaching, and Lord Chaitanya's teaching, and here's the non-difference feature. So this is just mentioning the elements: earth, water, fire, air, sky. That's you. You are the objects of sense perception, the life airs, the five senses, the mind, consciousness, and false ego. Now he's going to express the non-difference, but 2 verses in a row. There's the non-difference. Iti madhva bhajante mam. To understand the all-pervasiveness of Krishna, one becomes Krishna's devotee. The material elements and anything expressed either by words or by the mind are nothing but you. That's pretty strong. And if you just read these two verses, you could become Mayavadi. But you have to keep reading the rest of the Bhagavatam because we're not, Bhagavatam is not teaching Mayavad doctrine. So here's the scene again. For those of you who just came, we started the session reminding us all of the entire seventh canto is this discussion between Yudhisthira, seated there, and Narada Muni. And he's on a nice little seat, and he's seated, both of them are seated before Krishna on the occasion of Rajasuya Yajna. So questions are being asked by Yudhisthira. So he wanted to know, Yudhisthira, wanted to know the impartiality of the Supreme as it appears that he's partial. You know, people can easily get that idea. He's partial. He likes the devotees and he doesn't like the non-devotees. He lets them have it. But, it's a misunderstanding. It's a very superficial understanding. So here's that verse, Canto 7, Chapter 1, verse number 13. When Maharaj Yudhisthira was performing the Rajasuya sacrifice, the great sage Narada, responding to his inquiry, recited historical facts showing how the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always impartial, even when killing demons. And the vivid example is what we're observing today. The appearance of Lord Nrsingadev and finishing of Hiranyakashipu. No one could finish him. He was terrorizing the most powerful persons in the universe, the demigods. And he was a terrorist. He took over the kingdom of heaven. He had a big battle. His son got the name Indrajit because he defeated Indra, to speak of himself. Then after Indra got bumped, he sat on his seat, king of heaven. Who cares for these little puny demigods? My son can take care of them. So they were intimidated by this terrorist, and therefore they asked Lord Vishnu, help. So he did. There he is. He's finishing Hiranyakashipu. Could be finished otherwise. And his son, one of his sons, but his most prominent son, this one, Prahlada, somehow became just the opposite of his father. So we'll be discussing how that somehow happened. In one sense, it's simple. Then it has some further detail. The mercy of Bhakta, Narada Muni, like he imparted bhakti into the heart of Prahlada, and he remembered everything and was living according to what he heard. So he was a great personality in all circumstances. So here's the final verse. So the first two verses for today's discussion were the non-difference between the personality of Godhead and its energies. Note this, iti matva bhajante mam bhutavava samanvita, same Bhagavad Gita message. And it's through devotional service. Bhaktya mam avijanati yavanyas chasmi tatvataha. We all know the verse. Here's the final verse for this session. Neither the three modes of material nature, sattva, rajas, and tama, nor the predominating deities controlling these three modes, one of whom is Vishnu, by the way, nor the five gross elements, nor the mind, nor the demigods, nor the human beings can understand your lordship, for they are all subjected to birth and annihilation. Now remember, those of you who were here on time, he recited, all these items just mentioned they're you. And now he's saying in this verse, all these things, they don't understand your lordship because they are also appear, they have birth, and they're subject to annihilation. The whole cosmic manifestation appears and then is withdrawn. It's maintained for some time. That's goodness, that's Lord Vishnu maintains. But they only stay for some time. And because those that stay, for those that identify with their temporality, can't understand the personality of Godhead. They can't understand you. And it's true. However smart, or however pious, however endowed with material assets some person or persons might be, they can't understand. So if they can't understand, who can understand? One who is engaging in devotional service to the Supreme, they can understand. It's a nice science. Here's the other half of the verse. Considering this, the spiritually advanced have taken to devotional service. Such wise men hardly bother with Vedic study. Meaning, in contrast to the Jnani. Certainly we have Vedic study. With Vedic study, there's a vast body of literature called the Vedas. And in that vast body of literature, there are divisions. And the biggest division is the Karma-kanda division, like 90%. How to do to get material boom, something that is desired by a living entity covered by a body. The body is the manifestation of desires to enjoy. So there's procedures to honor this way, that way, by performance of yajna, to get stuff. That's it. That the Vedics, those who want stuff, those who want material objects and enjoying of material objects, that's Vedic study. Is you go to a Brahmana who has studied the Vedas and proficiently can perform these yajnas. So karma kanda. Then a little above, jnana kanda. So jnanis, they certainly like Vedic study, but what's their purpose? Largely, primarily, it's becoming one with the Supreme. Liberation, moksha, and what does that mean? Become one with the Supreme. I am Brahman and I want to identify myself with Brahman, so when I'm God, I'm Brahman, Brahmasmi, making no distinction between the individual Brahman and Para-Brahman. No distinction. Although it's there, but there's no distinction commonly made. And if one makes such a distinction, that's rare. Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita, Bahunam Jamanamante Jnanavan. One who's a jnani, they possess jnanavan, they possess jnana from vast study of the Vedas. Mam prapajate. They take shelter of me. So what's that special thing that they've understood? Vasudeva Sarvamiti. The Supreme Person, Vasudeva, is the source of everything. He's the emanating source of everything. Which Prahlada has already come to that conclusion. They're not so interested in vast, assiduous Vedic study. He's already reached the conclusion of the Vedas. Instead, they engage themselves in practical devotional service. And so, engaging oneself in practical devotional service doesn't mean, I'll say it twice, it doesn't mean that one doesn't hear and chant. It does mean when, practical devotional service, that's also practical. Because the fruit is practical. So here's a nice little illustration of the same. Na te vidu svartagatim, na Me vidu suragana prabhavam na maharshayaha. Neither, this is Bhagavad Gita chapter 10, neither the hosts of the demigods, nor the great sages, know my origin or opulence, for in every respect I am the source of the demigods and sages. It's really simple. Like what existed before we existed? Who can say, because it existed before you existed? And then you came into existence. So what was it that existed before you existed? You can't know. You can say perhaps maybe. But honestly, what I don't know. So Krishna's saying neither the demigods nor the sages can know my origin. Know my origin or opulence. Now what's Krishna's origin? He doesn't have origin. They don't know their origin because he existed before they existed. Now, what's the answer? Then it's not. Then Krishna is not knowable. No, Krishna is knowable, but not knowable by sense perception or by mental speculation. Neither process. So what's the main means is devotional service. That is, if that which existed before we existed is revealed, then you can know. But it's revealed, and otherwise you can't know. You could say perhaps maybe. That's nice. Perhaps not also. You don't know. The devotional, the emphasis, this third of 3 verses for this session, is devotional service is the means of knowing the Supreme. Bhaktyamam abhijanati. You all know the verse. Only by devotional service can the Supreme Lord be understood. Now, this is a thread that's throughout the whole of the Vedas. It's certainly a thread in the Bhagavad Gita, although it's coming in chapter 18. It's indicated indirectly. Now here it's explicit and directly. It's only through this one means. Now one might say, well, wait a minute. Wait a minute. What about, you can say fill in the blank. All these are is it not possible that one can become self-realized by this means or that means or the other means? And self-realized is one thing, and understanding the source of the self and everything is something else. Say it again. Is it not possible that one who becomes thoroughly conversant in the Vedas, is it true that that person cannot know Krishna? Because Krishna is throughout the Vedas, right? So it would make sense that one who studies the Vedas thoroughly, they can know Krishna because he's the source of everything and he's revealed within the Vedas. The answer is they'll come to a different conclusion, except the relationship, loving relationship. So the loving relationship, that's bhakti. Loving relationship, then through loving relationship one can know. Without the loving relationship one can have a theoretical understanding, but not real knowledge. A little sharing. Not that I haven't read biographies about Prabhupada before. I certainly have. But of late, there's 2 books that I've been, they're wonderful literatures describing the in-person association that 2 devotees had and wrote a book about their association with Prabhupada. So those that haven't had, many of us haven't had, but those that have had intimate, day to day to day, intimate association with Prabhupada, they know him. They know him in a way that the rest of us don't know him. But there's this saying: to know him is to love him. And to this day, those that are dedicated as those that had his direct personal association, it's they know him. And it's at their fingertips. It's within their heart. It's both immediately proximate to them, and it's within them. And you just speak about the personality, about Srila Prabhupada, and you get their Krishna. It's like Krishna and Uddhava. When Vidura meets Uddhava in a forest of Vrindavan, he asked about Krishna, and Uddhava is non-stop talking about Krishna because it's what's inside and it comes out. So these devotees that have had intimate association with Prabhupada, they understand him in a way. So and their love for him is so palpable. It's infectious. I'll give a little example of this. On more than one occasion, but on one occasion, I was with Hari Sori Prabhu. Now, most of you know at least who he is. He was the personal servant, wasn't the secretary. So Prabhupada had three people travel with him. Pradumna, Sanskritist, that did editing and synonyms and Sanskrit work. Corrected the diacritics and the publications. And he was with Prabhupada all the time. As Prabhupada was engaged in writing, he was with Prabhupada all the time for years. And his personal secretary, those were GBC members. Before that it was something else, but it was secretary that took care of his correspondence in practical matters, his travel arrangements and this and that and the other thing. Secretary, Sanskritist, and his servant. And his servant, it wasn't easy to maintain that closeness because the saying goes, familiarity breeds contempt. So that was difficult for some persons. Without all the detail, Hari Sori lasted the longest. So I was sitting one time in Mayapur, we're having prasadam together, like a big row of devotees. So I just asked him a question about Prabhupada. I asked him, you were with Prabhupada so much. Could you give a little description of what happened when he was making a journey to go to London and then to the USA? In its final journey when his body was emaciated, because Tamal Krishna Maharaj's personal secretary persuaded Prabhupada, you're like Arjuna, you're going to die in the battlefield. Let's go to the West. You can give your association to your devotees. Because Prabhupada was like a tiger, and you give him some encouragement, and he's ready to go. So he agreed to go. When they got to London, he was taken to a hospital. And when he was in the hospital, I asked him, what was all that about? And then yes, I hit the Prabhupada button. And he just went into this, like he's taking his prasadam, but he says, Prabhupada. So he said, Prabhupada, as you know, Prabhupada generally had a massage. The reason he had a massage wasn't sense gratification. He had a massage because one of his kidneys didn't work at all. The other one of his kidneys was half. What the kidneys do is it eliminates toxins. So his body wasn't eliminating toxins. So the massage was to take the tissue and relieve the tissue of that accumulation of toxins. So he could drink water after the massage and pass urine, and the toxin would go in an artificial way rather than through the kidneys. And he said what happened was there was the other half was a failure. So it was too difficult. He couldn't function. So he was taken to a hospital. And then it was decided, Prabhupada decided, that's it. Krishna's knocked on my door and it's time for me to depart. So I'm going back to India. So he, after a few days, turned around and went back to India. And then Harisori just taking Prahlada. He said, Prabhupada had a capacity for bearing pain that was unbelievable. He gave two examples. He said, have you ever had an abscessed tooth? He looked at me, stopped chewing. Have you ever had an abscessed tooth? And I said, yes. He said, it's painful, isn't it? So Prabhupada had an abscessed tooth. His whole jaw was swollen, because some tooth somewhere in his jaw was infected. The gum was infected. So they asked Prabhupada, can we take you to a dentist? He said, no, just give me cloves. And so he knew what remedies were for different things. So they brought him some cloves, and he put some cloves in his mouth, and it kind of numbed the pain so he could function. Tolerating abscess is difficult. I mean, a tooth ache is one thing, and abscess is an extreme condition of a toothache. And then one day, Harisori went on, one day as he was having prasadam, he reached in his mouth, yanked out the tooth, and handed it to me and said, here, you can keep this. And he went on with his meal. So the half a kidney instead of two, half, an abscess. Then he went to the final story was, he said, always Prabhupada was in pain. There were only 2 times, he told me one of those 2 times, where Prabhupada was in so much pain he couldn't do his translating work at night. So there was a system that Prabhupada had a little bell, buzzer. He would just tap a button on his desk, and the button would be wired to where his servant would stay, and the bell would ring in where his servant would stay. So we tapped the buzzer, the bell ringing system on his desk, and it was, Prabhupada's system of this and other. Prabhupada's system was he slept about 3 hours a day. At night, 2.5 hours. And he would just wake up. As far as I understand, he didn't have an alarm clock. He just woke up after 2.5 hours. I mean, most of us can't do that, right? And then he would take his bath and etc. and chant some japa, and then right away engage in his translation work. While we're upstairs snoring, he's downstairs doing his translation work on the Bhagavatam. Labor of love for his world and his devotees. So he rang the bell. That. Probably a little louder than that, because he woke him up. Sorry, was awake, was asleep, woke him up. And when he got up, he went into Prabhupada's room, and he said the chadar was over his head, his whole body was trembling, shivering. And Prabhupada spoke in a very deep voice. He said, I'm in so much pain I can't translate. So he wasn't unable to perceive pain. He was very tolerant of pain. And just whatever it took to carry on in his devotional service, that's the fuel in his tank that drove him forward was his service to his spiritual master, who serving the disciplic succession, serving Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, serving Radha Krishna. That was the fuel in his tank, and that kept him above the pain or the the other side also, that so-called happiness. He didn't have it. I mean, he had a body, so his body was getting old. He could feel the symptoms of age and disease, and ready to leave. So I'm telling this story to illustrate a point. The illustration is one who intimately associates with and serves another knows that person very well. Like others don't know that person. The others may know this, that, or the other thing based upon the limited interaction they have with that person. But the personal servant of Prabhupada, and they have such love for him. And that was many years ago. Just recently, I'll end, but just recently I had a question, Prabhupada question. So I asked Hari Sori, and he researched the question to get the answer. He gave me several answers, so just cut and paste from his books, Life with the Perfect Master books, and gave it the answer. To this day, he's wired. It's inside. And we rely on persons like him. It's like I discussed this in relation to Krishnadas Kaviraj. He didn't have the association with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but he had association with Raghunath Das Goswami, who left Puri when Mahaprabhu departed this world, and he went to Vrindavan, ordered by Rupa Goswami. While we're here in Vrindavan, you're with him in Puri. Not only you're with him in Puri, but you were under the care of Swarup Damodar, who understood everything about him because of his intimate relationship. You know all those things. So you sit under this tree 3 to 4 hours every day, just tell the history of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And the person who heard him, one of the persons who heard him every day for years, was Krishnadas Kaviraj. I mentioned this already. Unique personality, very, very, very humble, very qualified. He became the compiler of Chaitanya Charitamrita for us. Although his body, his hand was trembling. He was so old. But he completed Krishna's mercy. Didn't live much longer after that. So those that have intimate association, they can understand the person. So it's through bhakti, not through jnana or karma, that one can understand. That's the point. It's only by devotional service. That's this particular verse. Now the illustration that goes with it, this is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Haridas Thakur. And there's the passing of Haridas Thakur, who was immersed in the holy name, so immersed in the holy name that Mahaprabhu gave him a title, Namacharya, given directly by Mahaprabhu. So we say, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu knew him, and he knew Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. because of the medium of devotional service, the exchange of love between the two. Here's our last slide for this session. Elsewhere it is said, this is from the purport of this verse, Aradito yadi harish tapasa tata kim. That's not from the verse, it's from Prabhupada's purport from Narada Pancharatra. Same speaker, Narada, but it's from a different book, Narada Pancharatra. If one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engage in his service, there's no more need of severe austerities, penances, and so on. You remember from previous verse, there was the 10 items that are paths to liberation. Remember that verse? Just a few verses ago. So, if one can be intimately engaged in devotional service, those 10, etc., are not needed because it's already included in the purpose of pleasing Krishna. So whatever it is that's suitable. Just this morning, I heard Prabhupada speaking in Vrindavan, and his point was that in this age of Kali, people just don't have the capacity to do severe austerities that were done in previous ages. Just not, you don't have the capacity. There may be persons more austere, some persons less austere, but the austerities of previous ages not possible. People just don't have the capacity because it's the age of Kali and virtue gets diminished. And the capacity to engage in austerities is a virtuous capacity. People don't have it. It's diminished by the influence of this age. Therefore, bhakti. Bhakti awakened by the chanting of the holy name. That's the austerity. But it's austerity brings happiness. That is to say, following a prescription to get free from a disease brings happiness. Disease is not happiness. Diminishing disease is happiness. That which brings about the diminishing of the disease in material existence, that's happiness. And it may feel somewhat uncomfortable, just like today, many of us will be fasting. I mean, not everyone, but many of us will be fasting until the Lord appears. At dusk, neither daytime nor nighttime. To uphold the words of God. So it may be uncomfortable. No problem. Why? No problem. I mean, my digestive system is used to having breakfast and lunch and dinner. But no problem because there's a higher principle. Because, as we've heard several times, there's something very special about Sringa Chaturdashi. Even before Nrsimhadev appeared, there's something special about that this particular day, today, is invested with spiritual potency. So fasting on the day with a spiritual potency, at the end have a big feast, fantastic. But the austerity, it's simple. In comparison to previous ages' austerities, it's very simple. However, if after performing severe austerities and penances, one does not understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, such practices are useless. A little example, and I'm going to end. The painting is a painting of Madhavendra Puri. And by the way, Monday is the appearance day of Madhavendra Puri. So it's a warm-up. Madhavendra Puri was on the Paramahamsa. There's 4 stages of sannyas, as you may know. And he was in the fourth. The fourth, without listening the previous 3, Paramahamsa Sannyasi is one that, like the one below, Parabrajacharya, the one that travels and travels, has no fixed residence. But the Parabrajacharya may, commonly would, accept alms, go here and there for some part of the day and accept alms from persons that want to give some alms. His maintenance, physical maintenance. But in the Paramahansa stage, Madhavendra Puri had the practice that he would never do that. Madhukari, like madhu, like the bee, go from flower to flower and something, business finished. He wouldn't make that madhukari exercise. If people came and gave him something, he could accept, would accept. Otherwise, he would fast. So sometimes, for days, he would fast. No, because he was Madhavendra Puri, and even he traveled, people didn't know who he was. His presence was profound. They could sense something special about this person. So it was common that he would have fast for some days, not just Shrina Chaturdasi, but some days. And then receive something. Then be satisfied with that something. So he was in Vrindavan. You know the story. He was in Vrindavan. He was just chanting. And as he was chanting, one little boy, Krishna, coward boy, didn't introduce himself. Haribol, I'm Krishna. You're my devotee. I'm before you because you're my devotee. He didn't identify, reveal himself, but he brought a pot of milk. It's a nice story. Goes on, and the pot of milk, he said, was sent by some village ladies that saw he was sitting under this tree, and they said, in this village, no one goes hungry. Take this pot of milk to this sannyasi. So I brought you a pot of milk. Please take. Then he did poof and disappeared. And as Madhavendra, you know the story, as Madhavendra Puri was taking the milk, he felt ecstasy. Not an ordinary pot of milk. And he then was meditating on the little boy, and he understood, wait a minute, that little boy was Krishna, who brought some milk. So he kept the pot and tied it in a cloth. The cloth was tied to his waistband, and little bit he took a piece of the pot every day. Yummy, huh? But, because it's the prasad that came from Krishna's hand. And the rest of the story goes on. He had a dream. In the dream, same coward boy appeared. Krishna appeared in his dream. It said, my deity form is just down the way at Govardhan Hill. And I was hidden there. My deity form was hidden because of fear of attack by some dacoits, some military men. And I want to be worshipped. So please find me. This is where I am, da-da-da-da-da. Get some local village people, da-da-da-da-da. And place me on the hill. Worship me. The dream broke. So Gopal was found. Gopal was established on the hill, and it has everything to do with Govardhan Puja story, which is also coming. So he was able to, he was undergoing austerities, Madhavendra Puri. He was undergoing austerities that are, pretty exceptional. But it wasn't his austerities, it was his devotion to Krishna that enabled him to understand Krishna and have Krishna reveal himself. Exceptional. Acharya. And that's Prahlada's teachings. we're going to end and see if there's some discussion. Look, just looking around, the number of persons in the evening is like double compared to midday. But that, just because I travel every now and then, it's not my experience. I don't know what it is about. Maybe it's not just midday. It's Sri Chaturdashi and people are busy with Sri Chaturdashi or something. Let's see what happens. I expect tonight there'll be a lot of people. Huh? Okay. Yeah. Okay.
My question is, Gnani and yogis,
Hmm.
they pursue their path. But here Krishna clearly says that only through devotional service he can be known. So what is impetus for them to not come to devotional service and continue to follow their path and know Krishna through knowledge or means?
Well, those that want to know Krishna are rare anyways. Because most people that are pursuing the path of karma and the path of Gyan, knowing Krishna is not their goal. There's an affinity for being an enjoyer. And then there's procedures of prescribed duties, detaching oneself from the result of prescribed duties. And then some may become karma yogis, but many people are on the path of karma, accumulation of piety by performance of good deeds. So there's many steps or layers. But why? Because they're not interested in knowing Krishna, and of those that are interested in knowing Krishna, there's the path of karma, and that's what they're familiar with. They have desires, so I get both of my pockets filled, the me and the Krishna pocket, and that's nice for me. I'm feeling content. Then the Gyanis, they're people that just want knowledge. There's people out there, they don't want Krishna. They don't want knowledge to reach Krishna. Then some persons that are cultivating knowledge and cultivating knowledge and cultivating knowledge, they may get a little hint. May or may not. But the real goal of this knowledge thing is to know the source. But then the source is either light, impersonal realization, not to know Krishna, but impersonal. The Jyoti, Brahman feature of the Supreme. And they don't make that distinction, Brahman feature of the Supreme Person. They just Brahmasmi on the path of Gyan. So there's lots of distractions and detours and other purposes. But, those that follow either of those two may eventually come to Bahunam Jamanamante. May not. Now, supposing somebody's very simple, they're not really a big karma yogi, they're not a big jnani, but just very simple. We had this nice discussion before coming here. I was in Alachua. Prabhupada told the story. There was a lady that, very simple village lady in Vrindavan, and every day she went to the river Jamuna with a clay pot, because she was poor, she had a clay pot, and she brought to the deity, Radharaman, she brought to the deity a clay pot filled with Jamuna water. And did that every day for the rest of her life. Very simple lady, not educated, not this and that. She wasn't doing it because she was going to get some reward from the temple. She just, some daily service that she did because of her love for Radharaman. Prabhupada said that's eligibility. It's sufficient for going back to Godhead. No, he didn't explicitly say that's where her destination was, but that's the eligibility. So the answer to your question is that's not what they want. They want something else or mix. And those that want, then Krishna will guide those that want. Krishna will guide them by association with those that have that they can get teachings from those that are situated that way. And do a little course correction in how they're approaching their performance of life. Association with a pure devotee is very important and special. So somehow we bumped into it, or it bumped into us or something. And we had the good fortune of saying yes, or at least quasi yes. Maybe not fully yes, but so there's benefit. It's transcendental benefit. Okay. Someone else wants to contribute? Yeah.
Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for the class. This question is more in the material sense. So we talked about cause and effect.
About cause and effect.
So if someone is going through a tough time in their life, how one should understand that it is a result of their past karma and not that Krishna is testing. Not that Krishna is testing. Because Krishna.
Okay. Well, two things. One, even in Abbas Bhakti, shadow Bhakti, preliminary, not pure Bhakti. Shadow Bhakti or Abbas Bhakti has the power to completely dissipate prarabdha karma. So you can eliminate that option. But practicing devotee, preliminary, it isn't put into a position of suffering because prarabdha karma is eliminated for such a person. So something else is happening. What's that something else, which is what your question is. So it may or may not be that Krishna is examining, but the internal potency of Krishna is at work. And when the internal potency of Krishna is at work, it may be to strengthen our determination to reach him, because our determination to reach him may not be so strong. So the internal energy may be helping us, not examining us per se, but giving us an obstacle that creates a situation where our dependence upon him will increase, because there's dependence upon him quasi, partial. And then the rug gets pulled out. And one gets startled. There's another option besides testing. That's two so far. Here's another one that Prabhupada describes. It's right from the Bhagavatam, and Prabhupada refers to this in terms of his own life, and taught devotees that were having difficulty. Sometimes this is what's going on. Krishna is explicitly showing his mercy for those that have some residual attachment to the temporary, Krishna may not test, but just take it away, the temporary. They're left with nothing. And when they're left with nothing, the verse in the Bhagavatam says, even their family and relatives abandon them because they're not able to maintain them, and good for nothing. You're a loser or something. Meaning, they may not be so virtuous family members. They want something. You're not giving that something. You're no longer able to give that something, even if it was modest. That's the kindness of Krishna. It's in the Bhagavatam. So that's another option of why there may be some misfortune. Krishna's giving some special kindness. The benefit, he knows when to do that, when not to do that, because the person will then, that such a person, as happened, Prabhupada said it happened in his life. He goes into detail. When an astrologer predicted that you'll have wealth like the Birla family. That was in his astrological chart. And so Prabhupada was thinking, based upon the astrological chart, but my spiritual master gave me this service to do, but first let me have some wealth, and then I can use the wealth to spread Krishna consciousness all over the place. But you need some wealth. But so I didn't right away. It was a two-step. So Krishna was very kind. Krishna took it all away. That wealth that I was destined. So destiny, there was a question yesterday about destiny. And, is that, what we preach, are we confronting karma? So Krishna confronted not karma, but destiny. And he took it all away. Nothing. Krishna's mercy. And he understood it because of his spiritual master's association and his familiarity with the Bhagavatam. So there could be different reasons why one is undergoing, Prabhupada's word is reversal. You're going this way, and the next thing you know, you're going that way. I didn't change gears. I didn't put in reverse. But I'm going that way. Krishna's mercy. It's one option.
Krishna.
Yeah.
Following up on his question and your comment, so the verse you mentioned about family members abandoning you, is that from Gajendra's pastime?
Is it from where?
Gajendra's pastime when his
I
family...
can't remember where it's from. I think my memory says, which may be wrong, it's from the Uddhava Gita section, it's from the 11th canto, not from Gajendra. But I'd have to look it up because my memory isn't so great.
The other question is, so if we see these reversals, if we are on, like, let's say, path of Mishra Bhakti, and we want to keep both the pockets full,
Yeah.
but then we get reversals, should we take it as an indication that Krishna wants us to focus more on spiritual life? Or should we try to fight these? No,
My answer to a question like this is it depends. And, it can be not those two options, but it could be the whole spectrum of options in between. So it takes case-by-case situation to understand. And it takes intelligence to discern which of those options is what's going on. Most of us don't have that kind of intelligence, the discerning capacity. Is it this, or is it that, or is it a combination? Therefore, minimally, strengthen your relationship with Supersoul, because then you may get the intelligence, and without it, you won't get the intelligence of how to how to assess what just happened. But in order to strengthen the connection with Supersoul, the practices or sadhana needs to be strengthened qualitatively or quantitatively or both, at least qualitatively. That's for sure one thing you can do. Whether it's whether the cause of misfortune is any one of the options mentioned or something else, I'm going to need guidance from Supersoul or from a qualified person. And even if I know what the cause is, still it's strengthened my sadhana. My relationship with Krishna must be strengthened. That's for sure in any circumstance. Good fortune or ill fortune.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes. Yes.
Well, yesterday evening you were talking about how Prabhupada met this Christian priest, and they were talking about the Ten Commandments.
Yes.
Though not, shall not kill. Discussion happened, and how Prabhupada was not imposing our philosophy to that priest. So my question is around.
He made it uncomfortable, but he did it by question and answer. It wasn't disrespect and slapping him around.
Yeah, that's what I meant. So practically for us, I mean, it to me seems like it's a very fine line between imposing and inspiring by example. For example, if we want the next generation, younger generation to take up with this practice, how much do we impose versus how much do we show by example? In the sense that the latter, when we show by example, may not drive them to take up with this process. So we have to impose something. But what's the balance, and what if it turns out negative? Imposing too much.
This is the parenting question. Well, I'll give two answers. One, the same as before. It depends. You, the individual, the relationship with the individual. And then at different times, the relationship is like this, the relationship is like that. So there's some variables. It depends. The second is respect. Just in a word, one word. And when dealings with a next generation person is respectful, friendly, or etc., etc., you can, like using Prabhupada's example, you can attract bees with honey better than with vinegar. So be honey-like in dealings with others, whether it's younger generation or anybody else. Try to be honey-like. Now, honey-like doesn't mean never making strong points, because sometimes strong points are needed, and then you have to be discerning when is it appropriate. An example, again, it was something I was just hearing this morning, but Prabhupada was saying, you're not a pacifist if it comes to when someone makes an offense to Vishnu or to Vaishnava, you're not pacifist. But so when it comes to crossing the line of disrespect of a Vaishnava or Vishnu, then strong. Let the line, don't cross. But when you do that, and the relationship is honey-like, then the person can understand they mean well for me. They're not just exercising their autocratic authority, abusing their elder position or their position. So, because in a normal circumstance, there's affection, or I said earlier, respect. And different persons can have different behaviors because of their association with guna and karma. They may be infected by this mode or that karma or this situation. And so you could just see what it is, but don't let that diminish the respect for the soul that's part of Krishna. And then you're not going to be able to help them. So back to your question. How much should you instruct? It depends on the relationship. But if the relationship is wholesome, then based upon the relationship, you can instruct or not. And otherwise, just be a good example. There's other option that you were saying. Just be a good example. And titrate, or little by little by little. If there's some need for some instruction, then it's little by little. Yes. All the way in the back. Microphone. Here comes the microphone.
Pranam Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I'm trying to form the question, so please excuse me if I don't really lead you to the question. My question is about, or my confusion, or all the mind-boggling right now is about Bhaktyamam Abhijanati. And in Bhakti Yoga, we are trying to serve Radha Krishna through Bhakti Yoga, and then we are trying to understand that. Even Brahma, as you mentioned, couldn't understand Lord in a full sense.
Yes.
And we are just mere human,
And we're just what?
humans. We are just human beings, right? So,
Humans.
yeah. We are not even at God
Tiny,
level.
little entities.
Yeah. At times I wonder, do I know my, we have Laddu Gopal, so at times I, wonder if I know my Lordship well. I want to understand them well so that I can serve them well. But I don't know when I've understood them well, or at least, you have that intimate relationship with them where you get a feeling, okay, this is what my Lord wants, so that you can serve them better. Like you mentioned about Prabhupada's
Yes.
servant.
Yes.
He
Yes.
understood Prabhupada well so that he can serve well.
Yes.
And maybe, you can share your, realization when you realize probably you started understanding Lord well. Maybe I can correlate that some point of time in my life and understand that, at least now Radha Krishna is communicating and saying, do that. That will make me happy. How do I serve my Lordship well? So that's where, as I said, I might
Beautiful
not lead to
question.
the question.
Beautiful question. There are stages of bhakti, and the preliminary stage of the medium or in between stage, and the advanced stage. Beginning, intermediate, advanced. The understanding of what's going to be pleasing to the Lord will be more refined or less refined depending upon the stage. If that interest or intention or sankalpa is fair to partly cloudy, directionally at least, mixed maybe, but directionally at least, I want that Krishna will be pleased. I want to be situated in a loving relationship, which means the object and I'm the subject, and he's to be pleased. That in itself is pleasing. Krishna will recognize. And then then the relationship begins. Because when Krishna sees you want, then he'll reciprocate. And in different ways, and different degrees. Sometimes, and sometimes, sometimes from within, sometimes he'll bang you on the head, sometimes he'll send someone, sometimes, but he'll help, because if we want that relationship, and the relationship is that you should be pleased. I'm going to tell a little story, and then I think we should end. Many years ago, maybe 30 years ago, I was visiting some devotees in Singapore. I hadn't been to Singapore. To get, from the U.S. to Singapore is, umpteen hours. And, the flight departs at an odd hour, the flight arrives at an odd hour. So I arrived at an odd hour in Singapore, and then immigration and the whole thing. So the first business was get clean, because I was, the same clothes. And so took a shower, was putting on my dhoti, and there was this, that wasn't just a knock on my door, there was a knock on my door, and then the door flung open while I'm putting on my dhoti. This is like at 2 o'clock in the morning. There was a little girl, maybe, I don't know the age, but, she could speak, but she was very small, and she couldn't wait. She had made a necklace, and the necklace was different colored beads, different sized beads, but it was like so important to her. She had to give me this necklace. And I understood that, what was going on. She's a little girl, and, I didn't say, excuse me, but I haven't even put on my dhoti yet. I understood her heart. So, thank you. And, the necklace was too small, it wouldn't fit around my head anyways. But it was the gesture. And it's still here. So, there's a response to your question. That's the beginning, and then the intermediate, and then the advanced. So the most important element is is the desire, and then refinement of that desire in the course of time in different ways, through teachers and teachings and scripture, and, super soul from within, Chaitya Guru, indicating that wasn't very good. The motivation wasn't good, or the execution wasn't good, or something. Find it in the course of time. So good teachers and good teachings is next. But the good teachers and good teachings aren't always going to be by your shoulder. So you can get, reconfirmation that I might head in the right direction.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're going to end. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you a little bit later today. Krishna permitting. Who knows what's going to happen between now and then, but we should be able to see each other later. Shri Chaturdashi ki.